The rain had been falling since morning, soft at first, then heavier as evening came. The streets were slick with water, the last orange leaves sticking to the pavement like forgotten scraps of paper. On the edge of town, beyond the quiet rows of houses, stood Jefferson High School, dark, hulking, and almost breathless, as if it knew its time was over. RIT was November 14, 1978, the night the gym doors would close for the last time. Inside, the air smelled of varnished wood and sweat that had seeped into the floorboards over decades. Rows of metal bleachers loomed in silence, the echoes of cheers long gone. The last practice had ended an hour ago, and the players had left one by one, their laughter fading into the rain. But for a moment, there was still life inside that old building. A single bulb burned above the center court, casting a weak yellow glow that made the shadows stretch unnaturally long. Somewhere in those shadows, something waited, a truth no one wanted to imagine, a secret that would sleep for years beneath layers of dust and silence. No one knew that when the doors locked that night, they weren't just closing on an empty gym, they were sealing in a story. And it would take decades of storms, of vines creeping up brick walls, of whispered rumors, for that story to break free. What was left behind beneath the bleachers, and why, even now, does this gym feel like it's still holding its breath? Back then, Jefferson High was more than a school, it was the heartbeat of a small Ohio town. On Friday nights, the gym glowed like a lantern against the dark fields, drawing families from miles around. The air inside would throb with cheers, the squeak of sneakers, the thump of basketballs echoing like drums of war. For decades, those bleachers held generations of parents and kids, faces flushed with pride and hope. Among the players, there was one boy who stood out, not for his talent, though he was good, but for the way people felt drawn to him. His name was Michael Rivers, 17, tall and wiry, with dark hair that always seemed to fall into his eyes. He had a crooked smile, the kind that made you believe he could laugh his way through anything. Teachers said he was polite. Friends said he was fearless. His mother used to tell neighbors he was destined for something great, though she never explained why. Michael loved two things: basketball and music. If you walked past his house on Pine Street in the evenings, you might hear the faint strum of his guitar drifting through an open window. He kept a worn leather notebook in his duffel bag, filled with lyrics and lines that didn't always rhyme. "Someday," he told his best friend, "I'm gonna write a song that makes people feel the way the gym feels on game night." But there was another side to Michael, quiet moments that didn't fit the rest of his bright, easy charm. Sometimes after practice, he'd linger on the court, shooting in silence long after the others had gone, staring at the hoop like it held an answer on it. Why, he could see, and in those last few weeks before everything changed, he started writing more than ever. Scribbling so fast his words slanted off the page, tearing out sheets and stuffing them in his pocket like secrets too sharp to leave lying around. People remembered little things later, how he'd stand by the far wall during breaks, eyes wandering toward the bleachers instead of the scoreboard. How he once joked softly, almost to himself, "If these walls could talk, they'd tell you who really wins." No one asked what he meant, why would they? It was just Michael, the kid everyone liked, in a gym that felt like home. No one could imagine that within days both would be gone, the boy and the laughter that once filled that place. It started small. Little things that barely seemed worth noticing at first. Coach Daniels later said Michael had been quieter during drills. Not tired, the coach remembered, just somewhere else. He missed a couple of easy shots one evening and didn't even curse under his breath like he usually did. When Daniels asked if everything was all right, Michael smiled that same crooked smile and said, "Just thinking too much." His mother, Helen, recalled a different moment. One night she found him sitting on the front porch long after midnight, his jacket zipped tight, his guitar resting on his knees. "You'll catch your death out here," she told him, but Michael didn't move. He just stared down Pine Street as if expecting someone or something to come walking out of the fog. "Mom," he said finally, "do you ever feel like a place is watching you?" She laughed it off, thinking it was some poet's nonsense. Now she wishes she'd pressed him harder. There were other things too. A janitor named Earl noticed the boy near the gym when he shouldn't have been there. One Saturday morning, Earl came in early to fix a broken locker and swore he saw Michael slip out through the side door. "Scared the hell out of me," he told police later. "Kid looked like he hadn't slept, didn't say a word, just walked off into the rain." And then there was the locker. After the last practice, a teammate named Jard opened the wrong one by mistake. Inside, instead of shoes and jerseys, he saw a scrap of paper stuck under the shelf. He only read the first line before he shut the door and walked away. It said, "If the truth comes out, it won't be the game that kills us." Jard never told anyone about it, not then anyway. Looking back, those were the signs: strange words, restless nights, secrets scribbled on paper. But at the time, nobody connected the dots. They just thought Michael was tired, maybe a little moody. Kids go through phases after all. Except this wasn't a phase. It was the beginning of something no one in town was ready to face. It was a Tuesday evening, cold enough to see your breath in the glow of the streetlights. November 14th, 1978. Practice had ended late because Coach Daniels wanted one last scrimmage before the season break. The boys dragged themselves off the court, sweaty and tired, joking about burgers at Miller's Diner. One by one they left. Michael stayed behind. He said he needed to grab something from his locker. Jard remembers calling out, "Hurry up, man!" But Michael just waved without looking back. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. The gym was nearly empty when the janitor, Earl, started locking up. He saw the light on in the locker room and called out, "Closing up in 5. There was no answer. Earl figured the kid had already left through the back door, so he shut the main entrance, chained it, and headed out into the rain. When Helen Rivers woke the next morning and saw Michael's bed untouched, she thought maybe he crashed at Jard's house. By noon, when no one had seen him at school, her hands began to shake. By evening, when his duffel bag was found sitting on the bench in the locker room, unzipped, clothes folded neatly inside, panic had settled over the two. Like a storm cloud. The bag wasn't the only thing. His guitar case leaned against the wall as if waiting for him to pick it up. His leather notebook was inside, but the last few pages were missing, just torn out clean, leaving jagged edges like teeth marks. Outside, the rain kept falling. The parking lot shimmered under the yellow lights, empty except for puddles and the hum of distant traffic. No footprints, no signs of a struggle. It was as if Michael had vanished between one heartbeat and the next. And somewhere inside that gym, under the echoing silence of the rafters, something was already holding its breath, waiting, watching. For years, it would keep the truth buried in the shadows of those old wooden bleachers. By the next morning, the search had begun. At first, it was just friends and neighbors walking the streets, calling Michael's name into the wind. By noon, the local police were involved. Sheriff Tom Givens set up a command post in the school cafeteria, maps spread across the tables, coffee brewing in big metal urns. They started with the obvious places: Jard's house, the diner, the park by the river. Nothing. No one had seen him after practice. His mother, pale and trembling, kept repeating the same question to anyone who would listen: where could he go without his shoes? He didn't even take his coat. By evening, they were dragging the river. Volunteers waded waist-deep into the freezing water, their flashlights bobbing in the dark like fireflies. Dogs sniffed through the woods, paws sinking into mud. Helicopters buzzed overhead, searchlights slicing across the empty football field. Every few hours someone would yell, "We've got something." And everyone would run, hearts pounding, only to find a discarded soda can or an old jacket half buried in leaves. Rumors started almost immediately. Some said Michael had run away, others whispered about a girl, an argument no one could quite explain. A few even wondered if he'd been taken by someone passing through town, a stranger with no face and no name, but none of it fit. Nothing about Michael said runaway. He loved this town, he loved that gym, and if he left on his own, why leave everything behind? As the days dragged on, hope thinned. The flyers with his picture curled on telephone poles under the rain. Reporters came and went, their cameras cutting sharp angles of grief before moving on to the next story. Inside the gym, the echo of their voices still lingered. Search teams walked the court, checked the storage rooms, even crawled under the bleachers with flashlights. They found dust, spider webs, old popcorn buckets, but nothing that mattered. By the end of the week, Sheriff Givens stood in front of the Rivers house, hat in his hands, and told Helen what she already feared. "We'll keep look. Ma'am, but right now, we just don't have anything." And in that silence, the first real terror began, not the fear of what they knew, but the fear of what they didn't. Winter came early that year. Snow swept over the town, softening the edges of houses, blanketing the empty schoolyard in silence. The search had gone on for weeks, then months, and still there was nothing. No footprints, no witnesses, no sign of a struggle. Just a boy who had walked into practice and never walked out. The police tried everything they could. They brought in divers again when the ice thawed on the river. They questioned every student, every teacher, every face that might have passed through the gym that night. They even chased rumors, wild ones, that Michael had been seen in Cincinnati or working in a gas station down south. Every lead fizzled out like smoke. The gym itself became a place people didn't want to talk about. For the first few months, parents refused to let their kids practice there alone. Then slowly the team stopped showing up altogether. The final game of the season was canceled. No one complained. It was like the whole town had agreed, without saying it out loud, that the building had swallowed something it shouldn't have, and they didn't want to. Wake it up, Helen Rivers never stopped calling his name. She'd sit by the window at night, lamp glowing behind her, watching the street as if he might come walking home with that crooked grin, apologizing foe. The worry, his father Robert handled it differently. He stopped talking about Michael entirely, as if silence could keep him from breaking. By the next summer, the case file was thick with notes that led nowhere. Sheriff Givens admitted they had nothing solid left to work with. "Sometimes," he told a reporter, "the earth just opens and swallows people." It was a sentence that stuck in people's minds. The gym doors stayed locked. Weeds grew up through the cracked parking lot. A year later, Jefferson High closed its doors for good. Students shipped off to another district. And there it sat, a giant hollow shell on the edge of town. By then, Michael's name had become a story parents whispered to their kids as a warning: don't stay out late, don't wander off. Remember what happened to that boy. And just like that, Michael Rivers became more myth than memory, a missing piece of time that no one could explain. And a question that hung in the air like frost: how does a person vanish without leaving a single trace? It was late spring, almost 9 years after Michael vanished, when the first whisper of something new stirred the town again. By then, most people had stopped expecting answers. The gym stood like a skeleton on the edge of Main Street, its windows boarded, its paint peeling in long strips. Kids dared each other to run up and touch the door, then sprint away, laughing nervously, but no one went inside, not until that day. A construction crew had been sent to clear the building for demolition. The school district had finally decided to tear it down and sell the land. It was supposed to be routine: strip the metal, pull down the walls, haul away the rest. On the second afternoon, one of the workers, a man named Luke Hanley, noticed something strange in the locker room. A rusted drain in the center of the shower floor, its grate sealed under years of grime and soap scum. He pried it loose without thinking much of it. What happened next stopped him cold. The stench hit first, foul, chemical, like something rotting far below. Luke dropped his crowbar and stepped back, covering his mouth. Inside that dark hole, he saw the glint of metal, not just pipes, something else. He pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and lowered it into the opening. The beam caught a shape, a chain link, and then fabric. Faded red and white stripes clinging to bone. He climbed out fast and called the foreman, voice shaking. Within an hour, the place was swarming with deputies and yellow tape. Word spread down the street like fire on dry grass. People came running, pressing up against the barriers, whispering the same name they hadn't spoken in years. The sheriff's office didn't confirm anything that night. All they said was that human remains had been found beneath the locker room floor. in a narrow maintenance shaft no one remembered being there. But by morning, everyone knew what it meant or thought they did. The news didn't end there, because along with the bones, they found something else. A pair of sneakers still laced, a duffel bag collapsed in on itself, and inside, wrapped in a plastic grocery sack, a small spiral notebook. Pages warped with moisture, words blurred to gray smudges. But on the first page, pressed deep enough into the paper to survive the years, 2 words could still be read. 2 words that turned the whole case on its head. Not alone. The notebook became the center of everything. Investigators sent it to a lab, hoping to lift fingerprints or recover the faded ink. Days turned into weeks, and in the meantime, the town couldn't stop talking. That phrase, "not alone," spread like wildfire. What did it mean? Was Michael leaving a message? Was someone else down there with him, or was it something worse, someone keeping him there? Detectives started digging through old files again, calling in retired officers who had worked the original case. Sheriff Givens was long gone by then, but his notes painted a picture no one had forgotten. No sign of forced entry, no struggle, no blood. It was like Michael had stepped off the court and melted into the walls. Now, with the remains under the locker room, everything felt darker. More deliberate news crews returned, swarming the town like vultures. They filmed every angle of the gym, its walls crumbling behind the yellow tape, anchors repeating the same chilling detail. Authorities believe the victim may have left a final message. For people who had buried this story years ago, it was like ripping open an old wound. Helen Rivers, now gray-haired and frail, stood on her porch as reporters shouted questions. She said nothing. Just stared at the cameras with eyes that had seen too much. The strangest part was what came next. When the lab results finally came back, they revealed something no one expected. The notebook had more than one set of handwriting. 2 distinct styles, 2 different levels of pressure on the page. And while most of the writing was smeared into oblivion, one fragment near the back could still be read. 4 shaky words scrawled sideways along the margin like they'd been added in a hurry. They said it's waiting. That was it, no explanation. No context, just those words. Detectives tried to piece it together, but nothing fit. Was it a warning, a confession, something else entirely? Theories exploded online, everything from secret tunnels under the school to cult activity, to stories about a janitor who disappeared the same year as Michael. None of it could be proven, none of it answered the question that had haunted the town for nearly a decade. What happened to Michael Rivers in that gym, and more importantly, who or what was he talking about when he wrote that someone else was there? Because if the message was real, then this wasn't just the story of a missing boy anymore. It was something bigger. Something that might not be finished yet. The gym was scheduled for demolition the following month, but the order stalled. The county declared it a crime scene again, sealing off the building while investigators combed through every inch. They pulled up floorboards, opened walls, even drained an old boiler room that had flooded decades ago. Every search came up empty. No more bones. No more clues, just dust, rust, and the heavy smell of rot that clung to everything inside. That didn't stop people from talking. Rumors grew stranger with each passing day. Some claimed the construction worker who first found the drain had quit his job and left town without explanation. Others said deputies heard noises while working at night, scratches under the bleachers, voices so faint they sounded like a radio buried in static. Of course, the sheriff's office denied it all, calling it small-town gossip. But in a place like this, gossip has roots deeper than truth. One evening, a local reporter named Anna Whitman got permission to tour the site. She walked through the gym with her camera rolling, narrating into her mic. Her voice echoed against the cracked walls as she described the empty bleachers, the warped wooden floor, the faded lines of a basketball court that hadn't seen a game in years. Then she stopped. Her footage later showed her flashlight sweeping across the far wall, where a section of paneling was slightly darker than the rest. Anna ran her fingers along the seam, and for a second it gave a hollow sound, something behind it. She pried the edge loose and found a crawl space no wider than a coffin. Inside, packed in dust and cobwebs, were 3 things: a rusted folding chair, a paper cup half buried in grime, and another notebook. Smaller than the first, this one was worse. Its pages weren't just warped, they were smeared in something dark, something that might have been rust or not. The handwriting was frantic, jagged, looping over itself as if written in the dark. Most of it was nonsense, scribbles, repeated words, names crossed out, but one sentence stood clear near the center, underlined twice: "They never left." Anna turned off her camera right after that. No one knows why she left the building in a hurry, handed the notebook to the sheriff, and went home. That night she posted a single message on her social media before deleting her account entirely. "All I can say is this: don't go near that place after dark." And just like that, the story slipped back into silence. Except for the gym, still standing, still waiting. Some say if you press your ear against the old bleachers, you'll hear something moving underneath. Breathing, waiting for the last wall to come down. Weeks passed. The town tried to settle, but it never really did. Parents kept their kids close, locking doors earlier than before. The gym sat behind its chain-link fence, silent under layers of dust and peeling paint, but the silence didn't feel empty, it felt watched. One evening, a man named Trevor Cole decided to see for himself what all the talk was about. He wasn't from here, just a truck driver passing through who overheard the story at a diner. Locals told him not to go near the place. He laughed it off. He'd seen plenty of abandoned buildings before. What could be so different about this one? By midnight, he was there, flashlight in hand, boots crunching over gravel as he slipped through a gap in the fence. The gym loomed ahead like a broken giant, its windows black and hollow. He pushed the door and it opened with a long, tired groan. Inside, the air was thick, heavy, like it hadn't moved in years. His light swept across the floor, over faded court lines, over the bleachers where it had all started. For a while, nothing happened. Just silence and the soft hum of the flashlight in his hand, then a sound, faint, coming from somewhere deep below the bleachers. At first, Trevor thought it was the wind, but it wasn't. It was rhythmic, slow, a hollow tap like knuckles brushing wood from the inside. He called out. His voice cracked in the empty space. No answer. The tapping stopped. He exhaled and started to laugh until something answered him back, a voice. Not loud, not close, just a whisper that crawled out of the dark and wrapped around his spine. "You shouldn't be here." Trevor froze. The flashlight trembled in his grip as the voice came again, this time from the opposite side of the gym, then another voice, and another. All whispers, overlapping, circling him from the shadows. His light darted wildly, but nothing was there, just cracked walls and splintered seats. He ran, made it to the door, but when he grabbed the handle, it wouldn't budge. The door he'd walked through minutes ago was sealed tight, like it had never opened. Behind him, the whispers grew louder, still soft but pressing in, filling every corner of the room. He turned, and for the briefest second, the beam of his flashlight caught something in the dark, not a person, not exactly. It was the bleachers moving. Breathing, like ribs expanding under layers of wood. And in that frozen moment, as the voices closed in, Trevor Cole finally understood what the notebook meant. They never left. No one ever saw Trevor again, just his truck parked outside the diner, keys still in the ignition, and the gym, it's still standing, still waiting. And if you drive by late enough, you might swear you see the lights flicker inside. Or hear the faint echo of a game that ended long ago, followed by a voice, whispering through the cracks, calling someone new. Some places never let go of the past, they hold it tight like a secret too heavy to speak out loud. That old gym, it's still there, rusting, collapsing. But alive in a way that makes your skin crawl if you stare at it too long. Maybe it's just a story, maybe it's just small-town superstition. But if that's true, then where did Michael go? Where did Trevor go? If you ever find yourself driving through that part of town and you see the silhouette of that building against the night sky, keep driving. Don't stop, don't even slow down, because some doors once opened never close again. What do you think happened in that gym? Was it something supernatural or something far darker, hidden under layers of dust and lies? Drop your theories in the comments below. And if you want more stories like this, ones that make you question what's real and what's not, hit that like button, share this video and subscribe. Stay curious, stay careful, and whatever you do, don't sit on the bleachers.